You would recall when the minister started speaking, one of the common threads that came across throughout the speech was the concept of inclusive growth. And my take, and probably my organizational take, which will support me, Black Sash, is that that was not well articulated in the speech. We didn't see it in a more tangible form, the inclusive growth component. Now, I'm not going to unpack what does the inclusive growth concept comes from, because it really flows from the recent G20 meeting, which has its own communication. But I'll take what he said and begin to talk about what are the constraints and the limitations within our own budget constraints. I think already there's an inherent binding constraint within how our own budget is built up. Is the policy framework, the macroeconomic policy. It's actually based on an orthodox system which is not need-based, which is really begin to partially deal with issues of poverty and inequality. So if you address the issue of poverty and inequality within this framework, already you're sitting with weaknesses. And I'll talk about a few things that may seem to be positive, but there are a lot of limitations. Then I'll talk about what are those limitations. I think one of the key issues is the acknowledgement on the need for social security for poor citizens. And why it's important that you continue to support poor citizens through social security is that 70% of the national income is sitting within 20% of the citizens of this country. So your only mechanism, your only redistributive justice that you can give to people and use fiscal instruments is social security. That's the first thing. I think the second issue that we think was a partial intervention was the youth intervention. It has its own limitations. I think there were key three things that seem to be positive. I think it's important that we interrogate of what that the positiveness means. Is that they spoke about the increase in terms of education, access to education. Now there's a question around, when you talk about access to education, is how long is the distance you walk before you have access to school? And what is that quality of education that you get when you get into a classroom? That's something else. So, but that's what they spoke about. And then the second issue they really spoke about was the issue of skills. Now when you talk about youth, you talk about two forms of cahoots. You talk about those which starts for at 7 to 18, 3 actually, 18 to 25 and 25 to 35. So they talk about skills development, and the skills development component is likely to target the two cahoots, which is between 18 to 25 and 25 to 35. But the question is, are the skills development components going to be responsive to the industrial needs of this country so that young people can become productive citizens? And not productive citizens in terms of jobs, because that's a problem, is that during the apartheid, black people had to, the only asset they had was labor. And I think in the democratic dispensation, you would want other forms of assets that black people have. Amongst those is intellectual assets. And consistently, when we talk about young black people, we talk about them securing jobs. When are they going to become entrepreneurs as well? And we need a system that's going to be able to support them to be able to become entrepreneurs. I think the third component was enterprise development. And our wish is that the enterprise development will not only be in Johannesburg, only in Gauteng, but it will be able to find itself in Limpopo, in Northern Cape, in the Eastern Cape, in KwaZulu-Natal. And I think it's a component that we need to watch as well. I think the other issue really is the issue of financial sector transformation. I was quite excited. I think my excitement, of course, is likely to be short-lived, because if again you're introducing financial sector reforms within this framework, you may be sitting with black economic empowerment. I think there's a broad consensus that black economic empowerment has not worked, even the triple BE has not really delivered. But what my excitement is about financial sector reforms or transformation is that financial sector is the nerve center unto which finance is distributed in terms of which sectors of the economy that goes to. Which sector would you need to stimulate to create productive sectors or local communities across the country. So it's an area that we must not shy away from. We need to enter that space with a lot of radicalism in terms of what do we think should that financial sector reforms should be and the character that it should take. I think the other issue is really the funding around energy allocation. It's exciting, but we may be trapped into a situation where every renewable technology is imported from Europe, from Asia, and in fact locking us into long-term deals that would not in fact grow our own economy. So what we need to call for very strongly is that all the renewable energy or certain components of it must be local based, so that we ensure downstream beneficiation, mainly we ensure that we transfer skills, but as well as local people are able to produce. Now when I talk about the component of enterprise development around young people, this is an area they should be entering, and there should be an investment in that area, because it's a new area and it grants an opportunity. It means that government may invest a lot of research and development in that area. So this fund is floating, and I think as well we must inform that area. I think the other really component, the last component, which sits us in the catch-22 around the positives, is related with urban development. There's a lot of money that has been pumped. I think there's a recognition that there's a shift, there's a migration of people from rural areas to urban areas. But the constraints about that is that there's a superficial expectation that has been created that when you come to urban areas, your life will be sorted. So how many people that have moved from rural areas to urban areas and actually their lives have been sorted? The urban-based economy will not absorb them because they don't have the skills that the knowledge-based economy is looking for. So and as such, they are in the margin. They are in the periphery, or they get split out as soon as they are retrenchment. They are the first people to be kicked out because they don't present substantial skills that the economy is really looking for.